What is Sovereign Grace Fellowship? Well, Sovereign Grace Fellowship is a new church body meeting here in Fort Wayne, specifically right here in my home, along with my wife Lisa, our home, beginning February 14th, 2021. It is a church that is a part of the larger church, specifically the evangelical Protestant church, a church that's absolutely clear on the truth that we are not starting the church. We are joining with the history of the church throughout the ages, a church conscious of the glorious truth that God's people have been God's people from the very beginning. So we're a church with a sense of our historical standing. We're a church that, again, is Protestant and evangelical. We're a church that has that in common, the great ecumenical creeds in common, commitment to the solas of the Reformation in common, with all of the evangelical Protestant church. And then within that group, we have two other secondary distinctives. What we mean by that are things that we believe other believers cannot believe and still be believers. Is that clear? That's what we mean by a secondary distinctive. We're a congregation, for instance, that believes in the ongoing work and ministry of the Holy Spirit in and through what are commonly called sign gifts. We leave room for the operation of the Holy Spirit. We will have congregants, some of whom speak in tongues, some of whom have prophetic gifts. Those kinds of things are welcome and accepted here, though guarded and always done decently and in order. Secondly, the other secondary distinctive, by the way, there are lots of churches who share that and some that don't. The other secondary distinctive is that we not only embrace the five solas of the Reformation, but we embrace the 5 points of Calvinism. We embrace that theology, which historically is known as Reformed theology. We do not worship John Calvin, who, by the way, was long dead when the 5 points of Calvinism were first formulated. We don't worship any man save the God-man, Jesus Christ, but we do find it a useful distinctive, or useful shorthand, rather, to describe our theological commitments by saying we are Reformed or we are Calvinistic. We're also another third distinctive, maybe even lower down on the scale of significance, but we're a church that is family integrated. That is, we believe that it is best for God's people to worship together. And we think that the propensity in our day to divide church from church on the basis of demographics and meeting within the church on the basis of demographics, that is, this church is reaching millennials, that church is reaching boomers, and then inside this church we've got this ministry for the young families and that ministry for the golden agers, and all this separating of who we are not embracing. We're family integrated, families together, different ages together. Now that's all clear and simple. What I hope, though, is that there will be a spirit in this church. What I'm committed to is cultivating a spirit in this church that is a little less clear, but maybe even more important. Sovereign Grace Fellowship, by God's grace, will be a church where we experience both the teaching of sound biblical doctrine and a zeal and a passion for walking closely with our God. So often we tend to have zeal churches and knowledge churches. Zeal churches where they don't know so much, but they're real excited about it. And knowledge churches where they know a whole lot and they're not very excited. We want to have both of those things at peak levels. Commitment to sound doctrine and passion and zeal for the biblical truths that change and shape our lives. We want to love God with our minds, and we want to love God with our hearts with equal fervor. If you've got more questions, there is a Facebook page for Sovereign Grace Fellowship. They're also on rcsprouljr.com, some brief videos that tell a little bit about what we're hoping to do, and you can find those also on Facebook at rc-lisa Sproul. Thank you for listening.